I have John Ruhlin. He is the founder and author of Giftology. And we are so excited to have you here. Obviously, the whole premise of my life is giving. And you've been able not only to create a business out of giving, providing value, being of service, but you actually even wrote a book and now create content that is part of my program, meaning I'm here to empower over 1 billion people to be happy. And the way that we do that is to be of service and of value. What was it about the idea of being of value and service of giving that helped to inspire you to create a business and content around gifting?
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of things, it's desperation, right? Like a lot of things are born out of necessity. And I was a poor farm kid growing up in the middle of Nowheresville, and I hated being poor. And when I went to Malone, we were talking before the show started, Malone University, I went and dated this girl, and her dad was this rainmaking attorney, and he was super generous. He would like find a deal on noodles, buy like a semi-load. And I saw how people flocked to Paul with their ideas, their referrals, their connections. And I looked at Paul and I'm like, he's 60 at the time. I was 20. I was like, I want to be Paul someday. And so you notice when people are generous when you grow up poor. And so I started to mimic him, and I started to get referred into pro sports teams. I was interning with Cutco, the knife company at the time. And I pitched Paul the idea of giving away knives to all of his clients. I thought he'd buy pocket knives, and he changed my life forever. He's like, John, I don't want to give pocket knives. I want to give these $200 paring knives. I'm like, you want to give a bunch of CEO dudes of million and billion dollar companies a kitchen tool? Like, why? And he said, John, in 40 years in business, the reason I have more referrals, deal flow, access, all of this stuff is I found out a simple truth. And that's if you take care of the family and are generous with the family, everything else in business takes care of itself. So that was really the impetus. Like a lot of what I speak on, when I spoke at Google, I was teaching them what I learned 20 years ago from this small country attorney, because the principles of generosity, as you know, like they're universal. They apply whether you're in Africa or Idaho or California. So that little seed was planted, and it changed my life forever.
It's amazing because the parallels in our lives of, growing up in Akron with 6 kids and a single mom, and still yet she was a person that gave everything of herself. And I grew up around an abundant philosophy, even though we had nothing. And I witnessed, but I had my own gifting mentor. And one of the things that I learned about gifting is because of a scarce mindset, so many people limit the opportunities that they have. For example, your rainmaking lawyer had an abundant understanding and open mind of, if I take care of other people, they're going to take care of me. One of the interesting lessons that I've learned, and I think you have utilized it, and I will tell you that John sent me an extraordinary gift. And out of all of them that I receive emotionally, right? I bring stuff home all the time to my wife, right? I'm a quote unquote influencer now, right? And please keep sending me free stuff. If it's free, it's me. But I will tell you, you not only sent, this unbelievable set of knives, but they had my quotes, each one different, on the knives. And my wife was blown away. And because my wife was blown away, it was completely different than if someone brought me a cool bottle of something that I like or a shirt that I like. It was completely different. It was for the whole family. Like you said, one of the things that is relative to, and you use in your business, is the difference, and this is the lesson that I learned, between real value and perceived value. The context of gifting, I have a friend who taught me about gifting. He said, when people ask me what I want, I tell them gold coins. I said, why is that? He said, because it's the only thing with real value. A gold coin is worth what it is worth, but it has real value. You could buy me a Louis Vuitton purse, and that purse could be fake. It could be used, or you could have bought it 90% off, and it has a perceived value, whether it's faked. If someone doesn't know, it has a perceived value of whether it's fake, used, or you bought it 90% off. They still have a perceived value of the retail price of the purse. Yeah. And I think that it's important in gifting to be abundant, but also to take advantage of the family relationship, the emotional attachment, but also the value in giving perceived value, not real value.
Yep. No, 1,000%. I think so many people, it's easier to give the gift card. It's easier to give cash. It's easier to give this, pull something out of your closet. I mean, for you, to this day, like we got interviewed recently by the New York Times. And they're like, John, what's the hot, sexy gift? I said, then stupid knives. And they said, come on, no, that was what you did in college. I'm like, We sell millions of dollars of the product not because the knives, the item is the delivery vehicle for the emotion that you're talking about. You could buy 1,000 of the knife sets, but the fact that it had your quote on it, your wisdom, like it's part of your legacy, and included your wife. Like Paul, my original mentor, was big on the inner circle. Like it's one thing to do something nice for you, but if I can take care of somebody's assistant, their team, their family, their kids, their pets, like that's where you can invest $1,000 and get $100,000 in value. And so many people they're strategic with their marketing, they're strategic with their operations, they're not strategic with their giving. And it's mind blowing because it's an area of leverage that most people think like, I'll just send out wine to everybody because I like wine. And meanwhile, the other people that are getting it are like, seriously, like another bottle of wine? Like it's cool, but I'm going to drink it. I'm going to forget about it. Maybe I don't like white wine. I drink red. Maybe my dad's an alcoholic. Like there's so many nuances of relationship building and giving that people have never really considered to put strategy into.
It's so interesting you say that. When I worked for Leigh Steinberg, you would, way back when you could buy kids watches and cars and all these things as an agent, once they reached the legal side.
Yeah.
And we would never give gifts to the players or their family. You know who we give gifts to? Not to the head coaches of the colleges, like a lot of people did. And some of those gifts that they gave, believe it, way back when was bags of cash,
it's a bribe.
It's a bribe. I mean, yeah.
But there's a difference between a gift, a thoughtful gift, and a bribe. People put them all in the same sandbox. I'm like, come on, $50,000 is different than 500. That's just
but I have a saying in gifting, always try to find the trainer, because I came up in the sports world, because nobody gives the trainer of a team a gift, but yet alone the trainer spends more time with the players than anybody else, more than a coach. The trainer is in the locker room, in the training room, where he actually gets to hear the real truth about where people are going, what they're thinking, who's important, the spheres of influence, all that. And they never are gifted. So one of the other aspects of what you do is you're providing a gift to maybe someone initially like me, that every day, when I come into the studio, there's a whole bunch of people that have sent stuff, and please keep sending it. I love free stuff. But when it got to my wife, who's the trainer, right? My wife is the one that's with the family. The wife's the one who has the influence, the sphere. It's the gold mine. So, do you help, in the gifting, it's more than just the gifts that you do, because it's giftology, because it's a psychology of gifting where you're providing, like you did, advice and telling people not only what to give, how to give, but who to give.
Yeah. So there's the strategy. So we help people develop a relationship plan. Who are the suppliers? Most people treat their suppliers like junk. We teach our clients and we help our clients gift our suppliers like gold. And I learned that from an early mentor. They were the largest buyer of Rolexes in the US. It was OC Tanner out of Utah. Yeah. And they said, when Rolex comes to town, we buy them dinner. And I'm like, you spend tens of millions of dollars buying Rolexes. Why wouldn't they buy you? And they're like, we don't have a business without Rolex. We treat our suppliers like gold because our suppliers take care of us. And it was a reshifting of mindset of saying, in business, as a leader, as a manager, as a agent, you do a 360-degree view of all the important relationships: clients, mentors, bankers, lawyers, employees, and then the inner circles of all those people. So the relationship plan is part of it. It's the strategy, it's the consulting. And if your tribe wants to go download our entire playbook for everything that we do, when we take Google through this, or the Chicago Cubs, we focus on who versus the what. So who, how much you should spend, how frequently you should send it. Go to giftologysystem.com, and literally what took us 20 years to develop, they can have for free. But then the other half is, how do you scale thoughtfulness? It's not hard to buy your wife a nice gift, but it's hard if you want to buy 100 wives or 500 spouses or assistants or trainers. It's the execution of the thoughtfulness at scale. And that's really the core of our agency, helps people do it for them. So the Chicago Cubs have 500 relationships that they want to do a gift for. They would outsource that to us. We personalize the gift, we select, we hand make it. For them, we did speakers made of locker room wood that they ripped out. That was 100 years old. So it was an artifact. It had history, and it was numbered 1 through 500. So the execution of that, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you're a big company, most people drop the ball there, and they're like, you know what? I don't have time to handwrite all those notes. I don't have time to put their name on it. I don't have time to do the research to put the quotes on the knives to make it meaningful to you. So it's all the little things. People are like, John, I did giftology. It didn't work. And I'm like, did you do giftology or giftology-ish? And they're like, well, maybe giftology-ish. I'm like, well, that's like baking bread. If you do it 100,000 times, but each time you don't put yeast in, guess what you don't get? You don't get bread. And so you get matzah, which is fine, but don't expect bread. So people are like, I did this, it didn't work. I gave a gift and then I asked for a referral. I'm like, that's not giftology. That's give to get. That's a bait and switch. That's a manipulation.
It's trading.
It's trading. Yeah. I mean, I didn't send you the gift until after we'd had a conversation and developed a little bit of a rapport. Most people want to send gifts to cold. I'm like, why don't you pour gasoline on the 500 that are already warm or hot?
Yeah.
And so most people like say they're playing the long game, but really what they're doing, they're playing it in days, not decades. And you're somebody, Vaynerchuk, these guys, they really play it for decades. And for me, when I was 20, I was like, I got 4 decades to get to where this guy's at. And so like, I love playing the chess game, and I know you do. That's why I was so excited to have the conversation. I'm like, this guy gets it. Like David lives it and has for even longer than I have.
It's so good. And I was just with the Padres, and my latest one, Giftology, using your 3 guidelines, which I'll get to the last one, was I told him, hey, let's get a sponsorship from the local hospital, Scripps, and let's have every baby blanket that's given to a baby when they're born say Padres on it. And they're like, they got it right away, right? Because it appreciates the decision maker's family. It develops a relationship, not only with the family that's there, but every picture of that kid, when he looks back at 5, 6, 10, 20, 25, it's subliminal. He's going to be in a Padre blanket. And, it's the best. I would tell them, just stop digital marketing, buy a bunch of blankets and put them around these kids, or give, every 5-year-old in San Diego a free Tatis jersey is the smartest thing you could do, which is the last of the guidelines. You have 3, guidelines. Basic is how do we treat people with respect? It was the one that wasn't obvious to me. Like I've been doing this longer than anyone. I get the perceived real value, but appreciating, the spheres of influence. I always called it. You call it decision makers family. I call it spheres of influence. Obviously, develop relationships. My whole life's about relativity. But when I saw treat them with respect, I was wondering how that fits into the giftology.
Yeah, well, I think that most people treat the gatekeeper like a second-class citizen. Even the word gatekeeper has a connotation of like somebody to get around, somebody to get through, somebody to like get aside. And to me, like when you, like I saw it in Paul, my original mentor, was like, he treated the janitor at the same level as the CEO, like with respect. And so, when you treat the inner circle, the assistant, the chief of staff, a lot of times when I speak from the stage, I'm giving just as nice a gift to the CEO as the event planner. Why? The event planner does all the hard work, gets all of the hassle, and it gets treated like crap and gets none of the credit. And they're the ones doing all the hard work. So I'm always looking for the people that are underappreciated and treating them with the same level of respect and treating them like a peer, not a pawn. And so when you can do that with everybody says, oh, thank you. I so appreciate your time. But show me what you do with your time and with your checkbook, not just with your lip service. And when you, when I spoke at Google, I remember sending gifts to every single person that helped orchestrate. It was like 20 people at the event. And I sent them knives. And I had people write me and say, John, this is the nicest gift I've ever received at Google. I'm like, come on, like I sent you one knife. Like, John, this is the first time we've ever received something with a handwritten note with our name on it, and there was no Google logo. And they're like, some of them were in tears when they wrote it. They're like, John, I got moved emotionally. I'm like, over a stupid knife, a couple $100 knife. But it was the respect. It was the fact that I treated them like an equal, even though they were, in Google's eyes, they weren't an engineer. They weren't maybe as valuable because they were an event planner, an assistant, or whatever. And so to me, like any client that we're working with, I'm always, the question I follow up with is like a Harvey McKay question. It's like the McKay 66. It's like, what's their assistant's name? What's their kids' names? What's their wife or husband's name? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, then you can't work with us.
Right.
And unless you get that data, then giftology won't work, because you just want to send stuff that makes you look cool, feel cool. That's not what we're about. We're about emotions. We're about psychology. We're about like invest $1 and get $100 back. That doesn't happen by just sending fancy crap in the mail. It happens because you have a real trusted respect level and understanding of human beings. And most people think it's just sending expensive stuff. Like that's the last thing that it is.
Yeah, it's the doorman approach to me. I always was taught, treat your friends like your bosses and your bosses like your friends. But like the valet and the doorman. Like I don't understand why more people don't gift or at least tip big, because I've never met one valet guy that I didn't either give a gift to or give $100 tip to, that every time I went there never charged me for parking again, right?
Yep.
And now the tips that kept coming, but even more importantly, they started to know my name. So if I go to a place like the Ritz-Carlton and I drive up, talk about the value where people are scarce. They're like, well, you're wasting your money. Look, I don't do it to trade. I do it because nobody else is doing. I want to be abundant and reward, like make someone feel good, to be happy. But this is what happened by being abundant. I show up, oh my God, Mr. Meltzer, right? And meanwhile, I could be with a significant billionaire who all of a sudden is like, how the hell's the valet know Dave Meltzer? Like, who the hell's Dave Meltzer? I'll give you a quick another story. My favorite. I've always gifted the head of concessions at the stadium. Always gifted them. Well, one time a friend of mine said, I have two kids that are in the foster care and they're Green Bay fans. I had 2 season tickets in 50-yard line. So I said, sure, let me give them my 2 tickets. So these 2 kids who are in foster care from Montana fly down to see their dream team, Green Bay, play against the San Diego Chargers at the time.
Yeah.
Given the concession guy a gift to thank him. And I called him and said, hey, I have these 2 foster kids. Can you just go over there and tell them I'm here. I want to welcome you for Mr. Meltzer at the stadium, and whatever you want to buy, just tell me, I'll have it delivered to the seat. Right. Well, I will tell you that, that story by itself, right. And besides what it meant to those kids, people in the stadium were like, who the hell is David Meltzer? You know what I mean? And I think that people are short-sighted. They're like, I'm not going to tip $100. I'm not going to buy them a gift. What is it in for me? The thing is, when you think it's not for you, that's when it will be for you. And so, do you have one example of a story like that? I'm sure you have thousands, but could you share one? Because I love these stories.
Yeah. So what I'll say is that I've never met somebody that's putting into practice at the level, because so many people are like, yeah, what's the benefit? And I'm like, it's not just the gift. It's really the story that gets told. And then it becomes this ripple effect. And it's almost like something I did. Now, it wasn't to, the concessionaire. It was to somebody I met at an event. I barely qualified for EO, which is like a little lower than, it's like junior varsity, not really, but it's smaller groups.
YPO,
tends to be, YPO tends to be bigger companies. EO tends to be sub 20 million. So I barely qualified, go to this event, and I almost left the event because I was like, I found out one of the guys paid for KISS to come in privately $250,000 because they didn't have budget. And I was like, I could barely qualify to go to the event. Like, it cost me $10,000. This is like when I was 26.
Right.
And Steve Wynn is speaking privately to us. But anyway, one of the guys that was speaking there was, I'd never heard of him, but he grew 1-800 Got Junk from 2 million to 127 million.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine. Good
Cameron.
guy.
Yeah. So Cameron, I find out he's coming to Cleveland to speak to our EO chapter. And I'm like, hey, I got lower level seats. So LeBron's in town. It's Cavs game. We'll go to Morton Steak dinner and we're going to be brothers. Because I wanted him as not just a client. I wanted him to be a mentor.
Yeah.
And so I found out he was going to come, and I said, hey, Cameron, you go to the game. And he's like, I guess I'll go. Nothing else going on. And it was underwhelming at best. So I'm like, he could care 2 rips about this game. He's going to go on 100 of these games. So I said, what else are you doing in town? He's like, I'm going to go shopping. I said, where at? He said, Brooks Brothers. And on the spot, I'm like, hey, I'm a Jose Bank guy. What's your shirt size? I want to send you a shirt. And you can tell he's looking at me like, hey, does this guy have a man crush on me? That's a weird question. So long story short, I leave there, and 3 months go by. I called my business partner to tell him this idea. He thought it was a horrible idea. And Cameron starts texting me the morning of he's going to fly. He's like, my flight's delayed. I'm not sure if I'll make it in time. And he's like, he's trying to weasel out of the dinner and the ball game. So I text him, no, whenever you get in, it's fine. So I go to Brooks Brothers and I put down the Amex and I put down his sizes. I said, I want one of everything in your new fall collection, all your jackets, suits, belts, pants, shoes, everything. They think I'm joking. Like, no, I want everything. $7,000 of clothes. We go and outfit his hotel room to look like a Brooks Brothers store. It's at a Ritz. When he gets in, you could tell he wants to go to bed. He doesn't want to go to dinner. He comes back down after he went to his room and took a shower, and his eyes are like this big. He said, John, whatever you want to talk about for as long as you want to talk about it, I'm all ears. I've never had anybody treated me this way. Now, what's crazy is I continued to gift him for the next 10 years. People are like, John, why would you do that? Like, you didn't have to do that. Like, you already had him at the Ritz. I said, the reason we went from begging to speak for free to charging upwards of 6 figures is every time Cameron was double booked, he would say, you got to book John Ruhlin. And they'd be like, who's John Ruhlin? I'd be like, trust me. My first $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 speaking gig all came from Cameron, and all 300 of his clients he sent my way. It's a like 25 grand investment has produced a literally 100x return on relationship, ROR. You can't get that from Facebook ads. You can't get that from digital marketing. You can't get that from sponsorship. You only get that from human beings. The ripple effect of that story, he's told it on every stage all over the world, quotes, like, and people don't understand, like, you can't always measure it in the short term, but the ripple effect of the story can go viral. It's crazy.
It's amazing. And I started my speaking career, the high paying one, the same way I helped get J-Lo to Sanjay Hinduja's wedding, $2 million to get her there. And he offered me a big commission, and I refused to take it. And I said, oh, you'll be able to help me someday. You know, I really appreciate it. And then when he came to town, of course, I was the first person he wanted to go to dinner with. I didn't at the time even know how big Sanjay Hinduja and the Hinduja family are, chairman of Gulf Oil. But when I started speaking, he was the first call I made and said, hey, I'm starting to do some corporate speeches. And he didn't even ask how much I was, right? It was like, oh, we got 8 different gigs set up for you this year. And forget a commission, because I got all the content and I got stages where I could prove how good I was, and everybody wanted me when they saw those videos. And, you know, now I step on a stage and I get so much more with the credibility, all because I was service or value. Last thing real quick, and I'm going to shift gear. When to give and be generous. So we went through the why, the how, the who, but we didn't really say when, because you can't give to everybody.
Yep.
And I do that with charity. I predetermine mine. But my last question to you is, when do we know to give and be generous?
Yeah, well, I would say that, I mean, you know, part of it is trusting your gut. Like when I was with Cameron, I was like, this is somebody I really care about, or I want to be in my corner. Like we all say we want mentors and advisors and clients and centers of influence, but we haven't predetermined on the front end the value of or potential value of relationships. So to me, my business partner taught me this. It can be a math equation where you take, for us, it's 5 to 15% of net profits. We reinvest back into our relationship. So if you made 100 grand last year, that's 5 to 15 grand. Most people, they're, you know, even big companies, you ask them what their relationship building or gifting budget is, and it's like, well, we spent 3 grand on peanut brittle last year. It's embarrassing. It's like they don't, because they're not understanding the value. It's not a line item expense. It's an investment. And if you do investing the right way, it should be $1 in, $10 back out, but it might be over a decade. And most people don't have that long-term view. So what I would say is make it a math equation and show up for people when it's least expected. So we say no ABC gifting, like no anniversaries, no birthdays, no Christmas. And it's not because I'm a man of faith. Like I follow Jesus, like I love like the Bible, like like that's important to me. But if you show up for people at Christmas when they're getting 50 other things, if you give a gift after referral, you say you're in the relationship business, but really that, would you just turn that relationship into? A manipulation, a transaction, a tit for tat, a give to get. If you give gifts after $1 million deal signed, it's not really a gift. It's like they bought their own gift. So it's like if in a marriage, if you only show up on Valentine's Day and on her birthday, those are table stakes times. Like those don't get you brownie points, but if you show up on random Tuesdays, so to us, the timing is just as important as what you're giving. And finding, you know, Ritz, I didn't make this up, like the Ritz had the surprise and delight mindset. When you can, I call it planned randomness. I'll take my top 250 relationships and once a quarter, I'll send them something, not because of a deal, not because of a birthday, not because of an anniversary. I was thinking of you just because. The other person's like, I didn't give them a referral. I didn't do a deal. It's not my birthday. It's not Christmas. Like, John, what are you doing? And our clients get the same response. They're like, what do you, like, I didn't do anything. And it's like, you're a human being. You're in relationship. I was thinking of you. And because of that, it inspires them to go send a referral. It inspires them to be top of mind. It inspires them to go open a door for you because you showed up for them in a way that was completely unexpected. That timing, even billionaires like to be surprised and delighted. We all do as human beings. So people forget that and they're just like, hey, we're having an event. We got to do a swag bag. I'm like, that's the worst investment of dollars on the planet. It's horrible. It's such a simple concept, but nobody does it.
So good. Well, I only have one last thing to say to you, John. I wear a 16 neck, 32 sleeve, 32 waist, and a 30 length. Anytime you want, surprise me. I am not expecting it, but if it's free, it's me, and I really appreciate you. And I love the book. I love what you're about. I know that you and I are going to be close friends. I'm coming to St. Louis. I'm demanding that I get you on the Real AF for sure. You fit into our group so well. You get it. That's all I got to say. You should call your book You Get It, because you get it with Giftology.